Hi, everyone. Welcome to another industry webinar hosted by Red and Yellow. I can see a lot of you joining the Zoom at the moment. We've got an exceptionally exciting session for you today. It's all about AI with an incredible guest who I'll introduce in a few seconds. I'm going to give about a minute or so for more people to join, and then I'll run through the house rules for the webinar and how we're going to proceed. Cool. So while we're waiting for some more people to join, my name is Nick. I'm the head of content here at Red and Yellow, Creative School of Business. And as mentioned, we are really excited to welcome all of you to this incredible webinar with Mike Sharman. And we're going to be talking all things AI, which is really exciting. So I'm going to get straight into our introduction today. Mike is the co-founder and chief creative officer of Retroviral, which I'm sure you've heard of. It's an agency that has made more brands go viral globally than any other agency in Africa. And you would have seen his work for clients such as Checker 6060, Creepy Crawly, Rocco Mamas, Mnet, just to name a few. Mike was named a finalist in South Africa's Entrepreneur of the Year in 2018, and he's won awards at almost every major award show, including Cannes Lions, Loeries, and Sabre Awards. And for those of you who didn't know, from a philanthropic perspective, Mike is also a co-founder of the Put Foot Foundation, a charity that has raised hundreds of thousands of dollars and secured over 100,000 pairs of school shoes for children across the SADC region. So a very big welcome to Mike today. And as mentioned, we are going to be talking about AI in marketing and how not to use the huge. So before we kick off, just one or two house rules. If you do have any questions throughout the session, please use the Q&A feature, which you'll find at the bottom of the Zoom. Feel free to use the chat, but if you do have questions for Mike specifically, you can pop them into the Q&A. We'll get to those towards the end of the session once we've gone through a really exciting presentation, looking at some really exciting work from Retroviral, and that'll be that. Cool. So I'm going to hand over to Mike. Over to you.
Thanks, Nick. Shaldine's asking, will we get this recording? I think you will. I've got a lovely assistant to my right-hand side answering questions. And yeah, thanks so much for you guys for joining today. We've got more than 200 people, which is a pretty awesome turnout. And yeah, throw us an emoji or how's it or some kind of thing in the comment. So I know that there's life out there. These are always these awkward moments of speaking into the void. But I'm out here at the Red and Yellow campus out in Salt River. And I'm here to just spend hopefully the next 45 minutes plus some Q&A time with you guys. And yeah, I think before I even start, I think it's a really interesting time of our lives that we are faced with. Every time I go to another client meeting, out yesterday in Joburg, even at a coffee, bumping into peers, everyone just, what's the next thing with AI? What's going to happen? I was on a podcast last week, and I think I had a bit of adult ADHD, and I even said, like the dinosaurs didn't have podcasts. They didn't see humans coming. Now we've got AI. We don't know what's coming next. Maybe the machines are going to destroy us, and here all of us are just plugging away in marketing. So that's my silliness for the day. And I think essentially, like, we don't know what's going to happen. And I think that ultimately, no matter where we go, I think we just have to keep having fun, right? That's why I say this is why we got into this job. Like, we didn't get into places to save lives. Some of us didn't have the marks to go to medical school. Some of us don't have the ability to do heart surgery. So here we are. We're out here saving PDFs, not lives, people. So ultimately, that's that's the kind of world that we're in. And I think if we can't have fun, why are we doing this thing? And I think that, obviously there's a lot of debate and discussion around award shows, around purpose, around the landscape of why South Africa advertising, which is some of the best in the world, why is it not punching above its weight? Here at the D&D recently, about a week ago, there's been one South African winner, which is, it's a sad plight on the industry. And I think for too long, we've become obsessed with purpose, and we're not looking at ways in which we can really flex our creative muscle. We have some of the brightest minds, we have some of the best stories, and I think if we can all just start thinking, how do we unlock those opportunities and those capabilities, like we really are going to set ourselves up for a time, a moment, a place in the sun for South African creativity to rise again. If we look at the Netflix effect, the rise of K-pop and water, and how South African creativity has spread to the four corners of the globe. If we look at the influence from genres such as piano, if we look at the growth of people like Tyler, South African creativity, regardless of what the politicians are talking about in those very dire rooms. Here we out here. I've got my pink and my yellow background. So ultimately, like we're in an opportunity here to just reinvent, rediscover, refine our South African voice. And we've got so many different styles of voices, so many nuances, so many cultures, that I think that technology such as AI really will enable and will enhance us to be able to drive forward in a space that we can really own. And I think for me, that's the exciting part of today. So grab a water, get comfortable. Let's talk about saving PDFs. Okay, so 68% of consumers are more likely to share content if it elicits an emotional response. Like, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to create some form of emotion, right? We're trying to get people excited. We're trying to cut through, we're trying to drive through all these types of engagement so that people can really resonate with our brands. We emotionally connect with the brand so that then ultimately we can rationally drive sales. Because as much as we are into craft and art and all of these things, we still have a commercial transaction. We still have a business role that we have to play in this crazy marketing world of ours. I love this quote. It's from David Abbott. He said that shit that arrives at the speed of light is still shit. And this is the one thing that we are noticing with the democratization of AI, is that more and more vanilla work is being churned out on a more regular basis. I've seen some stats and some graphs recently with the adoption of open AI technology, such as ChatGPTs and the likes, the paid version, the free version. And that is absolutely hockey sticked into a realm now where we are playing in a space where people continue to churn out more and more noise. We thought social media was bad. Social media had nothing in terms of the world in which we've created for ourselves. It's a creative quagmire of the lack of excitement, creativity, and differentiation. And there's a saying about being remarkable. Everything we do has to be remarkable. Whether you are joining this call as a red and yellow student, if you're working in an agency, if you're part of a brand, the only way we can generate true differentiation is by being remarkable. And being remarkable is not about zigging where others zag just for the sake of difference. It's not just about being controversial for controversial sake. It's about plugging into opportunities, finding your USP, and looking at that and saying, like, how can we show up? How can we be absolutely different, but using your smarts from your strategy, developing your creativity, and then going to market in a different way where you can stand out from the crowd and you can stand for something. Too few brands nowadays are standing for anything. And now's the time to shine. Now's the time to rise, because you have so much opportunity. When people are defaulting to sameness, vanilla, mediocrity, you have the ability to stand out, whichever brand, agency, or client you're working for at the moment. Excuse me. So we saw this about a month ago, is that people started creating themselves, turning themselves into action figures. Whether you're using Midjourney, ChatGPT, or any other series of tools, people started flocking to social media in their droves. If you went on LinkedIn about a month ago, 6 weeks ago, if you went onto Instagram, if you went onto stories, TikTok, anything that disappeared, for the next 3 or 4 days consecutively, you would go through a one consistent flowing stream of action figures. And for us, we said action's great, action figures are great and all, but this world actually needs more action. It doesn't need action figures. So moving at the speed of culture, we took this trend that people were jumping on, and we actually self-reflected. Humans are the problem. we don't have enough action figures. We have people that are spewing their mouths off, not taking responsibility, not leading from the front. We're missing mentorship. We're missing guidance. We're missing people that are willing to stick their necks out and stand out for stuff they believe in. And we created this series that we pitched to the WWF just around action figures being a pivot into these actual lack of figures because of the action that we've created. And we thought that, if we can create some awareness around this, let's encourage people to go and actually donate and be involved in the WWF and making a value to that. And I think because of all the trend and all the vanillaness and the sameness around that trend, it really gave us an opportunity to pop out, to stand out from the clutter. And for me, that's where so much of the potential exists within AI. It's not always about being the fastest. It's about being fast and smart. And then living in an age of digital Darwinism, where the best, the remarkable, the different will stand out from the clutter. But now more than ever, we have to flex using those tools. We have to lean back and look into the strategic direction of where we've come from, and we need to move forward. People are trying to short circuit and cut out key steps. We're forgetting about brand strategy. We're forgetting about the tenets and the pillars that build these things. And we're trying to jump straight to the creative execution, because now everybody feels, everybody believes that they are the most creative person in the room because they can throw out one or two prompts and then AI will do the rest. People aren't even adjusting images. They aren't taking the time to curate and craft those touch points. But ultimately, this element of creativity will put you in good stead. The more you can refine, enhance, the more you can really find those sweet spots, that's where you're going to stand out from the crowd. Speaking about prompts, Midjourney's been on a really interesting journey. And I think that it's one of the tools that so many of us started using in the last 18 to 24, even longer months ago, in terms of what it offered, what it provided, how, the strength of your prompt can determine what comes to life off the back of that. And I think that it's one of those channels that we first started playing out from our perspective and working on some of our conceptual deck creation for our clients. And if you look back to what you could do and you couldn't do in the last 18 months, I mean, the world has evolved so quickly. It's quite terrifying to imagine what we'll be producing in the next 6 months, in the next 12 months, in the next 18 months. And there was a moment in time with this specific movie. The Barbie movie was creating a lot of conversation. Also, pre that serious AI hype, Barbie, the movie, was one of those times, one of those cultural moments that existed not just in the States, but as a global water cooler moment. And what I loved about the Barbie movie, it was that every brand under the sun was getting involved. And it was something that people felt that there was an opportunity to leverage. We always talk about those great brands in South Africa, such as Nando's, the ones that were always quick on the topicality, being able to go to market, come together with some witty line to generate more topicality, to hijack the moment, and then obviously self-support themselves on a journey to their own bottom line increases. So when the Barbie movie was coming out and there were all these brand partnerships and Mattel was just lapping it up and making billions in revenue, there was this moment in the film where there was this old granny and there was such online discourse about her and her role. And there was so much interest around, who is she? Is she the original, the OG founder of Barbie? Was she linked to Barbie in a previous life? There were all these like fan theories. So whether you were on Reddit or you're a conspiracy theorist on Facebook, or even your mom had sent you stuff on WhatsApp, there were so many different views around who is this lady. And we said, from a local perspective, what would be interesting to pair Barbie with a South African brand? And we looked at, we questioned, which kind of clients are we working on? What kind of relationships do we have? So we said, let's consider who Barbie would be quite an interesting mix with. And I think that's where some of the best ideas from an innovation perspective come from, is those unlikely mixes. So Barbie, old lady. We then said elder lady is giving Omar. There's definitely like an Omar Rusk vibe, integration, connectivity happening here. So we went into the prompt and we said, what if we pair Barbie and we paired it with a brand like Omar, and then we added a bit of human design element and some innovation from a product perspective? What would we get? And we ultimately, moving at the speed of culture, this is one of those lines I think is so important because so many agencies at the moment, so many brands are talking about this cliche that would go into the marketing swear jar right now around play in culture. We play in culture. We this in culture. We execute in culture. And I think that the reality is we can't rely on playing in culture. We have to live, be immersed. We have to live and breathe culture. And I think that's where there's so much opportunity from a South African perspective. When you live in culture and don't just play in it at a very superficial level, you can really drill down because in South Africa, with our richness of cultures, our languages, our nuances, there's so many different angles and so many different layers of stuff that you can untap and unfolding, unpeeling that onion. That's so much of the opportunity that exists from a South African cultural nuance perspective. Moving at the speed of culture, prompt that mid-journey, prompt that chat GPT. And then this is what we came up with. This was if Omar Rusks met Barbie in this brand tactical collision, what would that look like? And that's where we are right now. And we love this because if you look at this today with today's lens on, she even looks a little bit, maybe a little bit fake. But 18 months ago, 24 months ago, people thought she was so real. They thought that she was even Elon Musk's mother. People were asking us, oh, has Omar done a deal with May Musk? And we said, no, darling, this is May Rusk. So that obviously that's my dad joke for the day. And it worked absolutely on point. And once again, this is my favorite thing about thought leaders, those LinkedIn influencers and the opinionistas. They'll all come out and tell you based on certain algorithm developments, based on certain social developments, they will tell you that X is Y. And people will be so absolute about processes and procedures. Oh, static is dead. Long live the video. Oh, it's the year of mobile. Oh, it's the year of oh, AI is taking our jobs. But the reality is that this post proved that you don't always need an expensive production at a video level. Sometimes something that is static, that is remarkable, that stands out from the clutter and piques interest. Is there really a pink Omar product launching? We've seen it with brands like Kraft Heinz in particular. Taylor Swift breathes differently, and suddenly there's like a special limited edition Heinz product or mayo or seemingly ranch that drops in market, and people go absolutely bananas for it. And I think this is where the real opportunity exists for AI. It's not just about that superficial moment. It's about taking it through to the value chain and then dropping a product for a limited edition that creates so much connectivity, hype, and stickiness for your brand that people become obsessed waiting for that next drop, waiting for that next thing. So if you can figure out in your chain of command how to, one, sign off ideas quickly, take them to market, and add a physical/experiential moment, that's when you're going to win. Experiential will ultimately give you that differentiator. It'll give you that advantage. And I think that if we think about the future, now more than ever, those physical touch points are so critically important because the more digitally savvy we become, the more we crave interaction, human, experiential, otherwise. Anyway, so Omar Rusk, Barbie over here. She generated a lot of talkability. People on radio stations were talking about it. It was all over various like key websites, mainstream media, and it generated so much talkability and hype for the brand that that one simple A/B test went absolutely viral. And if we think of that as an extension, once again, started out as a simple AI experiment and test process, then spiraled and spawned a whole new process and a whole new thought process just a matter of months down the line. And we said to Omar at the time, we said, guys, look how well Omar Barbie has performed. Let's take her into the video space. Let's flex that muscle. Let's strengthen that KPI, and let's have like real impact on the bottom line. And unfortunately, there wasn't any budget at the time. So we did like what all good marketers do, all good creatives do. We can't lose this opportunity. We can't lose the story. So what started out as an idea around the World Cup 2023, Springboks defending their crown, we wanted to have tea and rusks with a Bok granny, tea and rusks with a Bok Omar. And obviously that didn't work out, but we did the next best thing. We went to SAB and said, guys, we can't do tea and rusks with an Omar. let's do beers with a Bockran. And that was the genesis that led to this idea coming to life. So before the World Cup launched, we managed to go and interview some gogos, grannies, omas, and we went and had beers with a Bockran. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is the Grand Box.
How do I plan to keep my grandmother's legacy alive?
On the African continent, we're raised by grandmothers.
I was raised by my grandmother.
Grandmothers are raising over 4 million of our children in South Africa every single day.
When we were growing up, like I'd live at my grand's house in Soweto.
All she would give me was love and time. And I think that's all I needed.
Skreeu so hard dat ek sonder my stem gaan. En as jy nie sien so how net jou is. Fabulous, go for it. Cheers everyone. Cheers. Dat is eigenlijk ook precies door. I have Kensington and in South Africa, yeah, Kenyan. Since he's not really.
You're famous now. You're all over the internet.
Oh, I don't know why. Because I tell you something I'm not interested in.
I really enjoyed the Grand Box campaign.
Yeah, the grannies, all these things.
So simple and so human and just lovely.
This morning, I'm joined by one of the Grand Box, Malcolm Marx's grandmother, Melody Anderson.
I hear you will be in charge of the bar now.
Oh,
yes.
wonderful. This is really a smashing day. Pretty we can't have a party.
Pity we can't have a party. Let's have a party, people. Anyway, hope you all have something cheeky in your coffee mugs that you're watching with today.
How do I?
So that's the Grand Box. So the elephant in the room. See what I did there? AI should streamline the process. I absolutely wholeheartedly believe this. It should be a process streamliner. It should be, I saw a line today that I loved, which was basically like our digital intern. It should take away a lot of the mundane tasks. It should strip out a lot of the elements that we're wasting time on. Those AI timesheet creators, we need those in our lives for so many of us on this call. But it should also generate opportunities. So for me, this has always been like my favorite thing about technology, even from the early 2000s, from the adoption of social media, all these kinds of things. How can we generate more opportunities in a country that is riddled and plagued with unemployment problems and crises, and that as our new pandemic? How are we using tools to create opportunities, to create jobs, to be able to bring things to life where we don't just chop creative skills and jobs, because that's what so many of us are afraid about today, but how can we make more opportunities? And for someone who sees the world very glass half full, I believe that there'll be more and more opportunities for you to create smaller, agile, more nimble teams. Because I've always had this opinion about never wanting to be the biggest, but being the best. And I think now more than ever, you have the opportunity to really lean into your best. What is your best? What is your hyper focus? What is your channel that you can be an expert? And I think that that's what these tools give us. They give us the opportunity to really find our slice of life and to be absolutely expert, superb, remarkable at that lane. And I think even if we look back to retroviral, it's almost 15 years now, 15 years on Sunday. Whoop, someone throw out an emoji for me. But anyway, like off the back of that, you know, we started out very hyper focused. Our focus at the time back in 2010 was you couldn't buy social media ads, you couldn't buy YouTube ads. And ultimately we amplified content both for other agencies and for brands directly. And that started out as something that had such a huge value, such a huge opportunity, literally just amplifying pieces of content. Then as media channels unlocked and as more opportunities arose, those things became more standardized, they became more automated. But what is the one thing that you can really double down with, whether it's your business unit, whether it's your agency, whether it's you leaving Red and Yellow to start your own kind of attempt at this world of creativity, we know that in this world, there are thousands and thousands of subsets of nuances of jobs, that there's so many opportunities that you have the ability to create your own workforce. And I've always had this belief, like, if we could just encourage and inspire 1 million people to create a job where they then hire 10 people, that's 10 million people that have a job. And I know that it sounds absolutely utopian, but now more than ever, we have the tools to do that. So we have the ability to change our fortunes and the fortunes of those hundreds, thousands, millions of those around us. So go out there and start your thing today. Start your side hustle. Don't tell your boss. So at the end of last year, we got briefed by Auto Trader, and Auto Trader was like, we've got this new campaign coming out. We really need to hit the ground running in January. And you know, us agency types, we always think we know better than the client. And that's where so much of these challenges really exist, right? And when they said to us, are we going live on the 1st of January? I was very dogmatic. And I was like, okay, 1st of January, nobody's online. Everybody's switched off in South Africa from December 16th all the way through to middle to end of Jan. We know that nothing ever happens in South Africa. But once again, here's a purposeful intent from a design and from an actual data perspective, is that the client said to us, they said, no, our data says, our data shows people are standing on beaches, sitting in walkways, chilling out, having braais, having beers. On the 1st of January, they are recovering from their hangovers, but ultimately, so many people are out there and they are searching car marketplaces. And it's interesting because obviously off the back of that, as the new year starts, and for those of you who have purchased a vehicle before, you'll know that you can buy a model from 24, and then obviously from the 1st of January, if you're purchasing that onward, it suddenly becomes a 25 model, so it becomes more valuable. So it makes absolute sense why so many people are searching for new vehicles, new insurance, all the new stuff on January 1, because when you've got the hangover losers, or the hangxiety as people call it, then ultimately you're already looking for those opportunities. Anyway, so October, November 2024, we're working on this campaign for Auto Trader, and once again, looking back at strategy, looking back at research, looking back at insights, really understanding the humanness. It's a key, it's a critical component to the world in which we live. And it's something that should be never discounted, because whether you are working on a marketing initiative or, you know, I use the old adage about stand-up comedy clubs and how the premise, the insight, the truth, that's the thing that's ultimately going to cut through. And it's the one thing that people are going to nod their heads to and say, absolutely bang on. That's right. And if you look at all the data towards the end of 2024, the one thing that really stood out was, for once in 5 years, South Africa was at its most confident. Can you imagine? Not since 2019, Q3, Q4 of 2024, we were the most confident. We'd gone from a -11 in confidence to a -5. We were so unconfident, we were still in the negatives, but we were still like 50% stronger at our confidence than we'd had been in the last 5 years. So there was that. There was hope, optimism around GNU. There was also success off the back of the Olympics. So many people were excited about our golds, our silver exploits, all these kinds of things that were happening. The sprinters, we're still talking about Akani and his homies today, Bayanda, all the other guys that are coming through from a sprinting perspective. It's absolutely fantastic. So with our nation's pride, our rugby championships, even Bafana was shining for us. There was so much confidence at a sport and a business and an economics level. That's where we started. We started off from a place of gees and confidence. And our line that we presented to Auto Trader was do it big. And do it big was a sentiment, it was a national feeling of South Africanness. And what we did was we wanted to tell a story of all these different scenarios and all these different archetypes of people that were doing it big. And the most important part of the time from an economics perspective was that there was this two-pot system. Those of you who haven't drawn down from your two-pot, I'm going to be the old guy in the room. Don't draw down from your two-pot because it's going to mess your savings for the long term. That's my FA non-financial advice for the day. But ultimately, that's what defined the sentiment we were in. We were confident and we had cash in hand. There was something like 1.5, 1.8 million South Africans had drawn down from their two-pot. The tax man was smiling. He had about 80 billion rands worth of cash that he was now going to be able to collect tax on. And South Africans, we know when we get money, we need wheels. And do it big wasn't around buying a brand new car. Sometimes it was about an upgrade. Sometimes it was about a first car. Sometimes it was about changing in your life stage. So ultimately, we told a story that didn't judge you if you weren't buying a new car, but it celebrated you and your confidence and doing it big in your manner. And for me, a perfect example of using AI in this instance is to show and sell. That's right, not tell, show and sell. Because the biggest problem with agency and brand communication is that we speak different languages. It's like one of those men are from Mars, women are from Venus's tropes, in the sense that agency speak and brand speak are so often misaligned. And AI gives us the opportunity to take all the crazy squirrels that are running through my head and my brain and to bring them to life and show the nut of an idea that we're wanting to bring to life, that we're trying to create, so that the client can see, I know exactly what this thing looks like. And by taking this image as a starting point, it's not there to create and roll out a whole set of creative, you're like losing the directors, losing all the various people who would get a job on a shoot, lose the photographers. No, it's about, this is what we want to make. We can print this out and stick it on a pinboard, and we could all see the Pantones of the pinks and purples. We can see the Pantones of the blue. We can see that big doggy, and we can say, let's bring this thing to life. And it gave us like a much better North Star, so that we then were equipped with the tools, the verbiage to say, client, this is what I'm going to make. Client, thank you, agency. This is what I'm paying for. And that's where so much of our miscommunication can be rectified. AI can help us speak, see, show, sell the right language. So what started out as an AI piece went on to become a banger. And in fact, it's been the most successful campaign ever, because we paired smarts, insight, customer feeling, and South Africanness in a world where people want that thing that we can attach to and we can identify with. So this is Do It Big.
The movie. We went from making the pots to the two pots that make us feel more affluent than a rich auntie. The big energy is so big that even on the 45th of January, we defiantly proclaim, calendar for who? This year, we're not phased by payday. And when you're rolling there with 0 pairs, no reusable bags, you have no worries and no regrowth, because you just got your hair did. Mid-month. Ew! No star 130 star USSD strings. Got data for days. Forget the e-wallet when the real wallet is smiling. Your great dog is in fact the greatest Dane, and your double cab needs to be a quadruple cab. Just so Great Danger has a front row seat to be the biggie to your small. Now's the time to treat yourself. Do it big. Browse Auto Trader. Not those kind of browse, Moss.
And I can proudly proclaim that not a single one of those fucking words was written by AI. So once again, take the creative, bring this beautiful thing to life, and massage and nuance those words, that everything is dealt with the insight and the like obsession it deserves. The biggie to your smalls, the brows, all those moments. And I think that's what made this campaign incredibly excited. And what was fantastic about this is that, you know, all the research moments, all the ins and outs, like in a perfect brand world, Kantar would have seen this first, then it would have given us a review based on an AI's view of this. So we had to do that after the fact to get some kind of benchmark for the next work that we do together. And what I loved about this was, you know, AI processed this ad after seeing it. There's nothing we can do about it. It was created, it flagged it, all that kind of stuff. And the AI was actually pretty good in terms of understanding where consumers would find moments that they enjoyed and where there'd be drop off. The one thing it couldn't get right, obviously, was South African humor and nuance. And it didn't understand those elements such as two-pot and the stuff that became so like tactical and tangible for the time. But what it did was it like kind of steered us so that going forward on the next time, we know the kinds of things, the pitfalls we have to watch out for. So once again, not being reliant on letting AI guide us, but rather just listening to some of the insights that can help build on and improve. And I think that's what we want to do. We all want to build on and we all want to improve. We don't want creativity to be stifled by AI. And I think that's a huge opportunity that presents itself to us in this space. Then once again, I think the one thing that we really do differently as a business, and the one thing that I've prided myself on since the beginning of this journey, is that we don't just make ads for ads' sake. For me, the earned journey after the creation of the ad is so critically important. Once again, something that, you've started with AI on this journey, you've created a piece, and for me, the piece is always halfway on the journey. Off the back of that, how do you PR the story? And it's something that we learned very early on in 2010 with the Nando's approach. You can't PR an ad. An ad is something that needs media, it needs channels, it needs support, it needs the drive, it needs the shareability, virality, you name it, all those kinds of elements. But what you can do is you can PR the newsworthiness, you can generate the earned off the news of this thing. And what we did was we specifically wrote all the press materials around consumer confidence, around having cash in hand with Two-Pot, and then the fact that South Africans were on this high and we're in a really good space. And what Do It Big meant as a South African consumer across various different demographic, culture, and various other lines. And I think that's the thing that really shone here. If you can see it, the top headline from IOL, vehicle search data shows boost in South African consumer confidence early in 2025. We then took real live data from the dashboards of Auto Trader. So eating their own dog food and using their own data analytics and insights to say, this is why South Africans are feeling confident, because they're voting with their wallet. They're coming out and buying these vehicles, they're purchasing this. And then once again, you can show the data. Are people going in and they are leaving the traditional German, Japanese, American vehicles? Are they going more to the China vehicles and the China manufacturers because they offer more space or size or build quality for a more entry level or economic budget? We've seen the growth of the JQs, we've seen the BYDs, we've seen the Havals, we've seen that they've really come out. Every time I come to Cape Town, I see there's a new dealership on some new corner in town. And I think that's the reality. So there's a lot of interesting new stuff, especially for hardcore journalists that want the research, they want the insights, and they want the business story. So what's the story behind or after the story? And that ultimately takes that story to an even greater space, because this is the thing, this is the superpower about PR that PR agencies must, is that when you get your story about your brand featured on a credible news site or a mainstream site, you get into ENCA or you get into IOL, those backlinks to the brand are critically important for your discovery and your search. And us as creatives, we don't like to think about all these real technical, nerdy wizardry moments like SEO and search and that kind of thing. But your brand will perform better if you're generating that talkability in these credible sources to ultimately drive much more credibility when people are searching and trying to find your brand. So yeah, so that's kind of how we do it. So there's been a lot of talk, a lot of question around humanity. How do we flex our humanness? I mean, the human eye and the human brain is an incredible thing. The more we see AI creative coming out, the more it's feeling like stock. And stock has always existed, right, in our modern times. And that's what AI is going to continue to do unless we can hunt the perfect imperfection. Because actually, humans are deeply flawed, and we look for the flaws in creativity. That's why character actors exist. That's why not everybody is an A-type Hollywood star. We want to identify with the character actors. We want to identify with that performance. For me, I'm always a huge fan of the performance in branded content, because ultimately that's the thing that separates stock from a film, is the actual performance and the delivery thereof. So hunt the perfect imperfection. And I love the phrase from Japan, which is wabi-sabi. What it means to be human, wabi-sabi is perfect imperfection. We are all deeply flawed. We are broken. We are looking for similar brokenness, and we are looking for similar imperfections. And the more you can consider the human condition and the flaws thereof, and build that tension into your storytelling, the better your opportunities of making your remarkable differentiation and making your brand and business fly. In South Africa, we have a lot of problems, and that is a great opportunity, because ultimately so much of our communication, so much of our methodology, so much of our messaging, if we look at solving real world problems and pain points, which we are not in short supply of, we have the ability to stand out from that crowd and look at using AI, whether it's for app development, whether it's looking for landing page solutions. What are the pain points that you're trying to solve for your customer, for your brand? And how can you get that thing to market quicker in order to make solutions for the things that you truly need? So thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for coming on this ridiculous journey into the squirrel's nest and to talk to me about some nuts.
Mike, thank you so much for a spectacular showcase of just how to combine the best of the efficiencies of AI with like real human ingenuity and creativity and insight at the end of the day. Like you said, I think many AI tools will struggle to get, especially South African nuance, and capture that feeling and that humanity of the tone of what it's like to live as a South African. We're going to run through some questions now. So for those of you who have not put a question into the Q&A feature at the bottom of your Zoom, the time is now. We're going to get through as many questions as we can before 2 o'clock. So if we don't get your question, we do apologize in advance. I'm going to kick off.
Also, Nick, if anybody wants to reach out, I'm Mike Sharman on all social platforms. If you're happy to send me a DM on LinkedIn or an email, whatever, just, yeah, if we don't get to it, just hit me up. I'm always happy to answer in the chat rooms. I see there's lots of stuff flying through here. Thanks, guys. Thanks for the lovely comments.
Cool. Thanks, Mike. So our first question from Janine. She's asking, what would your strategic comments be to top management or execs who say that marketing teams and budgets can be made leaner because we can just use AI instead of actual people to do the creative work?
I mean, that's like a deeper conversation, right? And I think ultimately in any place that's under pressure, any workplace, any brand, the first thing that gets chopped is marketing. So that's not a new thing. There's always like some bean counter or some C-suite who's looking to streamline costs, to look at consolidation. We're even seeing that with the big agency groups in particular. Like there's a huge shift. The brands are being folded in, teams are being chopped, tens and tens of thousands of people are losing their jobs. And I think ultimately, it's like, what is that relationship that you have with those very senior people? Because ultimately, money makes money, right? And I think if you can start solving problems where, even if it's like small, one bite at a time, when you eat that elephant and develop those solutions, you can start showing the people that matter most. And now more than ever, marketing has to understand business. For me, it constantly blows my mind when we are being asked to design briefs or answer briefs based on marketing and objective awareness KPIs, but those people haven't considered what the impact is on the business. For the businesses that will really thrive are those that have a very strong connection between marketing, business, and sales. And ultimately, those things need to work together a lot better. So if your teams aren't doing that, there's like a lot more of, they call it missionary sales when you're going and starting a new business or an industry. You've got to go out, you've got to spread the gospel. You've got to get the people that matter most to understand the importance of your work in this whole cycle.
Well, we've got a question from Jono, referring to your earlier comments just about, the amount of opportunity in South Africa, especially with being able to start a business, employ 10 people, and help solve the employment crisis. Jono wants to know, what advice would you be giving kids today when it comes to entrepreneurship and pushing the go button on building a business in South Africa?
I think we hear only what the politicians ever say. And I think that we don't really get to hear the nitty-gritty of it. Starting a business is hard and it's not for everybody, right? I think that's why we can't just wave a magic wand. And every time a politician opens his mouth and says, oh, our party is going to create more jobs if we are voted into power, it's just lies, because they themselves have never created a job, one job. And I think that there's a real doggedness in people that end up starting businesses because there's so many unknown unknowns. And for me, it's kind of like a video game. It's like you can only deal with the bosses that you are thrown at from those early stages. You don't play the final boss until you've managed to go through the levels. And ultimately, that's what entrepreneurship's like. For me, network is your net worth. And if you've got one or two people, if you've got one client that wants to work with you on the side, if there's a side hustle that you're working on, for me, it's all about finding the confidence in getting that one job. In 2010, I'd saved up maybe 3 months of salary before I started. And I said to myself, I'm giving my 3 months. If I haven't got a client from that, then, I'm going to go and try and get a job. And the thing is, it's not about just sitting there and waiting for it. You have to go out there. You have to be dogged. You have to go and just spread your own gospel about what you're doing. And you'll find that entrepreneurship is a series of events of momentum and success that come one after the other. And yes, there are moments where you fail. There are moments when you want to give up. And I think that's just a test of your own resilience and your own interest. Like, how much are you willing to take for that juice to be worth the squeeze?
Well, I've got another question from Daniil, who is asking back to creative strategies and the creative side of things. Are these strategies also relevant to non-South African consumers? I work with an international client base, and I'm curious to know if marketing should be done differently to them.
So for me, I think that ultimately, regardless your culture or your nationality, ultimately an insight is the most important starting point and a human truth. And I think that a recent example is we did some beautiful work for BIC South Africa last year with our Paralympian Phumelelo Mhlongo. So very specific to South Africa, his trials and tribulations and his success against all odds. And the best part of that was actually receiving a cold email from Paris where their procurement team had said, "We saw what you did for South Africa. We'd love to engage." And off the back of that, they just wanted us to roll out some DTP work and to do some assets. And I said, no, we don't operate like that. We don't just do assets. We're not just a sweatshop from South Africa. We have insights, we have strategy, and we have the ability to execute creative. And off the back of that, we ended up doing a deal where we created 3 TV commercials. They're busy in post-prod at the moment, and they're going to be going across the entire Eastern European region over the next 6 months. And once again, it comes back to like South Africans have a different way of hustle. We have a different approach. But at the end of the day, you can find a unique premise and insight in a story. I'll be posting some of those commercials on my LinkedIn in the next few months. But so much of those insights came from desktop research around European links to summer, fire, festival, etc. And those things anybody can unlock. We don't have any borders nowadays that prevent some chap in South Africa to be able to unlock an insight about a Spanish culture that happens on summer solstice.
Got quite an existential question from Tsepo when it comes to AI. So Tsepo would like to know, as AI keeps taking over tasks, which crucial human elements might we accidentally lose forever?
Wow. I think it's difficult to kind of predict, because I think with so many of the inventions that came beforehand, it led to redundancies on scales that we had no idea we weren't ready for. And I think that the reality is that we're going to lose a lot of the traditional structures in creative that we thought that always were natural partnerships. Like in our world, you know, you have your art director and your copywriter, and that's the way people have been doing things for the dawn, since the dawn of advertising. But, you know, the reality is with smaller upstart kind of boutique agencies such as ourselves, we've never operated in those norms and those ideals. So things are difficult for people that expect things to be structured in a certain way. But if you are geared towards making nimble solutions and pivoting to new results, I think the impact is less of a scary and worrying one. My thing that I always say is like, it doesn't matter what the job is that's being killed or culled or replaced. The one thing that we are missing as a species is our ability to interrogate. The thing is, like, from an interrogative comms perspective, we almost need to go back to a space where we become like investigative journalists, because we are so used to now accepting everything for what's delivered upon us. And each of us is living in our own bubble that's been created from our own biases, whether they are conscious or subconscious, in the algorithms of stuff that we receive. So we receive the news that we want to hear, we want to engage with, or we're the most fearful or excited about. And the reality is, if we learn to ask questions again, if we become more of an interrogative species, you can solve any problem, whether your work or your job gets destroyed and you need to move into something new, or if you need to create something from scratch.
Next question is from Jermaine, which I will preface quickly, just about the use of influencers when it comes to marketing. And I know there's been a lot of debate about influencers versus content creators, but for the sake of the question, let's go with influencers. The Google I/O, which I think was this week or last week, had some very, very realistic video AI video that came out of prompts. So Jermaine would like to know, what are your thoughts around the use of influencers versus AI influencers for marketing campaigns?
Geez, can you imagine those Temu and Shein ads now with all those faux influencers filling up our screens, right? For me, I think that, once again, like, we've been doing influencers for a very long time. We were like some of the pioneers in this country in terms of that space. And even before that, in my past life, working in traditional comms and PR, both in South Africa and in London, for us, influencers initially were journalists, because an influence was the ability to talk from one to many. And at one stage in time, they were just journalists, because you could speak to one journalist, he could tell a story to millions of people through the media channel that he operated in. So not much has changed on that front. You want to talk from one influencer to many customers, who then ultimately can become the conversion that you need. So for me, influencers as a spray and pray, or as like a one size fits all solution, is never going to work. And I continue to treat them as channels. And I think that for me, in my world, I'm always a fan of working with influencers who understand content creation, who understand scripting, who understand performance. And that's why I love working with comedians, because they understand the improv nature of putting content out there. They've got the audience in the channel. So whether it's guys like Glenn Beadham and Pam, whether it's Donovan Goliath, they understand both their audience and they understand the ability to create the content. And then when we're shooting, we can stick to a script, but then we can also go off piste and we can bring that to life in a different way. And I think that that's ultimately, for me, influencers as a generic thing are always going to fail. But if you've got a very specific approach to using them, leveraging, integrating them into your campaign, and once again, back to my point earlier on the human brain, we will start noticing those influencers who are fake and who are the ones that are being created from like an AI point of view. It's like Faux Out of Home. There's one or two that are really good, that look legitimate. The CGI on that is bang hot. But then there's average shit where you see people trying to pour Pepsis into Greenpoint Stadium and you're like, boring. Like, that's not real. And ultimately it comes back to our realness, our humanity. When things are too polished, that's when the subconscious starts twigging.
I'm going to try run through all of the AI questions first to stay on topic. Warren would like to know, with AI already in the creative industry, where do you see the opportunities are for students who are looking to enter the industry? What can students do now?
So we started an AI lab, a retroviral AI lab, as a bit of an experimentation, as a little bit of an A/B test, because there's a lot of these tools that we've been playing with. We've been building some of our own GPTs and looking at ways in which we can start feeding messaging and information into a brand GPT so that you can start developing your own things. I think this is the most exciting time for young people who are using the tech, who are playing with it, who are obsessing over it. And I think it's very similar to the space that we found ourselves in 2010. The 2010 example was like experimenting on WordPress, looking at analytics and seeing that the impact that had on brands. Now, if you are using something like LinkedIn as a space to profile your own efforts and your own portfolio work, there's so many ways on LinkedIn that you could potentially go viral, and similarly on TikTok when you're creating remarkable content in the AI space. So if you guys are obsessed with that, I say put it out there, put it on TikTok, put it on Reels, put it on LinkedIn, start building the portfolios, adding it to your Behance and showing the incredible stuff that you can make, because there are agencies desperate for your skills, there are brands desperate for your skills, and you guys are going to be in absolute demand in the next 6 months if you've got the skills and you've got the ability to bring that to life. And just keep experimenting. For me, it's always about experimentation. It's always about eating your own dog food and always putting your own stuff out there. That's why I continue to not so humbly brag every time we make new projects, because work breeds new network, it breeds new followers, and it breeds new commercial opportunities.
All right, we've got time for a few more questions. If you are putting your questions in the webinar chat, please remember to put them to the Q&A function, running down the list from that side. Esther would like to know, how will AI affect lead generation?
So yeah, once again, I think that it will aid in the short term, and I think you'll be able to A/B test a lot quicker and you'll be able to generate the click-throughs. The problem comes in when people start flooding the market with the sameness, when they start flooding with spend. You've seen it on social channels, especially in South Africa. The Temu Shein example is perfect. When you start like over-investing, then the algorithm starts mutating and it starts changing based on those spends, and then you start losing out and you start living in a war of attrition where it becomes a race to the bottom with more spend on those platforms. So many friends of mine who have run businesses that are platform based, that they run through Facebook, running, for example, signing up a specific age group or demographic of runners, both in South Africa and locally, to sign up for courses or sign up for some kind of training or some kind of modules. Like they've had to have a lot of headwinds up against those manufacturers who are out there trying to outspend the algorithm in order to drive their sale prices up and drive their returns. And I think your lead gen will be supported in the beginning, but I think you, like with all things, with Google, with the algorithms, with search, all the stuff, it constantly needs to be refined. Those YouTubers from 2010 who thought that they had the algorithm understood, it changes again, things tweak, things pivot, and you're constantly having to relearn, you're constantly having to learn the rules so that you can break them. And that's why I think that there's no one size fits all solution ever for lead gen and the results thereof.
Okay, Paul's got a
Two
question.
more questions, Nick, because I've got to catch a flight.
Oh, you're busy. Gotta go. Two more questions. These are very quick, also based on AI. First one is coming from Paul, and it's all about prompts. Paul says, I believe there should be an AI prompt module or course. I've noticed most of the prompts we use are generic, and that usually allows AI to give us the most top-level answers. Is there a way to unlock more from AI through prompting?
Definitely, yeah. I mean, I think there's a few people that are offering stuff like that in their personal capacities. LinkedIn searches will help you find that, especially if you do a search from like a first connection point of view, because those people tend to be more within your South African network. So have a look at that. And yeah, I think just looking at how some of these guys on LinkedIn internationally prompt, like you'll see basically a whole thesis. I saw something with Mickey Mouse and Iron Man today from VO3, and VO3 from Google is producing some of the most astounding results. And I mean, the prompt that he wrote about the light glistening off Mickey's white glove and how the thing pans and we go orbital. And I mean, he was basically speaking like a film director and a creative director and, you know, someone from a Hollywood studio all made into one. And I think the prompts are that there's a pot of gold in being a master prompter for those people too, who also asked the question about AI opportunities.
Okay, and then our last question we'll take from Cassandra, who wants to know about using AI images to market your brand. Is it a bad thing? Will people not trust your brand if you use AI images, or is that the way businesses are moving now?
So Cassandra, I mean, it's like AI is the Wild West at the moment. There's no formal parameters and a lot of this stuff. Obviously, the one thing about trademarks, if you're putting Mickey Mouse and Iron Man into your content, you can get sued because it's not your IP and there's obviously copyright infringement. So brands have to be careful of that. It's not too dissimilar from those days where on social media, people were literally stripping images off Google and then you're getting takedown notices because you're like, you've infringed on X, Y, and Z. So those parameters and those processes will come in. You know, for me, I'm always a little bit of a rogue, like rather beg for forgiveness than ask for permission. But some stage that stuff will change. So just keep experimenting, playing around. I don't think that there's necessarily distrust from using AI. The biggest watch out is because of the proliferation of scams and people using like Elon's image and Nele videos to try and scam people on money. These things are coming out all the time, that those deep fakes are becoming more and more prevalent on social, that you could potentially fall into the space of, if my brain tells me this thing looks like AI, I might be less likely to trust it. And consumers won't know that immediately. They won't know that that bias exists. But like I said earlier, our brains are trained to teach us what is human, what is organic, what is not, without us even knowing. It's that non-verbal, it's that like, you know, animal part of our DNA. And I think that ultimately that using your AI characters and those kinds of things, I think there has like potential subconscious pitfalls. But yeah, keep experimenting and figure it out. And then your journey will lead you in the direction that it needs to.
Thanks so much, Mike. I think that's a great place to end this Q&A session and to thank everyone for joining our webinar today. To everyone in the chat, thank you so much for being so engaged, and everyone who's joined us as a viewer, thank you so much. And obviously a big, big, big thank you to Mike for taking time out of his day to present this really, really inspiring session and reminding us to stay human in the age of AI.
That's it. Keep being a human fuck up. Peace.
Cool. Thanks, everyone. This webinar will be made available to you through email. So if you've signed up with an email through your RSVP, you're going to receive a copy of it. So once again, a big thank you from all of us here at Red and Yellow, and enjoy the rest of your afternoon.